All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Peace and power and elevation be to all you beautiful people out there. Excuse me, I'm stretching. So Ramadan Mubarak to all the beautiful Muslims out there that celebrating Ramadan. Okay. So today's topic, I am going to talk about Shaykh Ibrahim Niasee, or Niasee. So Shaykh Ibrahim Niasee is one of the Tijaniya Sufi scholars. He was one of the Sufi scholars out of the Senegalese area. He had a very strong following. A lot of people admire him. Okay. So I have some sources and information about him. Now, before I get started, make sure you subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, share my channel, and check out all the other contents I have on here. So thank you guys so much. Um, I was supposed to do this video Tuesday, but I had postponed it because there was other subject matters I wanted to talk about and discuss. But now I'm getting back into focus. All right, so I gathered quite a few information about Ibrahim Niasee, and so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Okay, so as you can see, this is the picture of Ibrahim Niasee. Okay, he was a sheikh. All right, so let's see. So it says he was Wolof. All right. So he was a Senegalese major leader of the Tijani Sufi Order of Islam in West Africa. His followers in Senegambia region affectionately refer to him in Wolof as Ba, which means father. Okay. Now, he was the first West African to have led an Al Azhar mosque in Egypt, after which he was styled Sheikh al Islam. He became close to many freedom fighters in West Africa due to his contribution for independence in African states. So he was the first, he was friends with and an advisor to Ghana's first president, Kwame Nkrumah, and friends with Gamal Abdel Nasser and King Faisal of Saudi Arabia. Sheikh served as the vice president of the Muslim World League with Faisal as president. Okay. So he was born in the village of Taba Nazim between the Senegalese city of Kalak and the border of Gambia. He was the son of Alhaji Abdoulaye Nas, the main representative of the Tijani Sufi order, often referred to as Tariqa al-Tijaniya, in the Salam region at the beginning of the 20th century. Hey, peace, John. How you doing? So during his youth, Sheikh Ibrahim relocated with his father to the city of Kalak, where they established the Zawila of Luna Nazim. After his father's death in Luna Nazim, peace, sister, how you doing? In 1922, Sheikh Ibrahim's elder brother, Muhammad al-Khalifa, became his father's successor or Khalifa. So the 22-year-old Sheikh Ibrahim spent most of his time farming in the family's field and teaching a growing number of disciples in the nearby village of Kuzi Mbitiyin, if I'm saying that right. Although Sheikh Ibrahim never claimed to be his father's successor due to his due to his charisma and precalculus knowledge, he gained a large number of disciples, and tensions arose between his disciples and those of his elder brother Muhammad al-Khalifa. In 1929, while on the farm of Kuzi Mbitiyin, the youthful Sheikh Ibrahim announced that he had given the key to the secret of divine knowledge, and thus became the Khalifa of Sheikh Tijani in the Tijaniya order, a position yet to be attained by anyone as of that time. Shaykh Ibrahim then declared that whoever wishes to attain mar, what's it, marifa, excuse me, yeah, obtain marifa, a level of divine certainty in the Sufi order, must follow him. So in 1930, after the prayer of Eid al-Fitr, a fight broke out between Sheikh Ibrahim's disciple and those of Muhammad al-Khalifa. The incident made Sheikh Ibrahim immediately decide to relocate with his disciple to a new place. That evening, he set out with a small group of his closest disciples to find a new place to live. And the next day, they established a new ziwa in Medina Ba, a village that later incorporated into the growing city of Kalak. In the following years, the Sheikh divided his time between teaching during the dry season in Medina Ba and farming during the rainy season in Kuzi and Bitiyin. During the summer of 1945, he reestablished himself in his father's house in his native village of Taba Nazim, rebuilding and reorganizing the village after a fire outbreak had destroyed much of it. So he quickly rose to fame throughout the countryside, and most of his father's disciples ultimately became his disciple in spite of his junior status in the family. Although his disciples remained a minority within Senegal, they formed the largest branch of the Tijaniya worldwide. And in an unlikely role reversed during the 1930s, several leaders of the Arab Idwa Ali tribe in Mauritania, the same tribe that introduced the Tijani order to West Africa, declared themselves disciples of Sheikh Ibrahim. Notable among them was Shekani Muhammad Wad al-Nawai and Muhammad al-Majri. Tariqa al-Tijani al-Ibrahima, as the Sheikh disciple came to be known, flourished and gained large number of followers during the 1930s and 1940s throughout North and West Africa. In 1937, upon meeting Sheikh Ibrahim during a pilgrimage to Mecca, the Emir of Kano, Nigeria, Alhaji Abdullah Bayero, gave his oath of allegiance to the Sheikh and declared himself a disciple of Sheikh Ibrahim. That incident made Sheikh Ibrahim gain the allegiance of many of the prominent Tijani leaders of northern Nigeria and also many others who were not Tijani prior to this time. Okay. So let's see. So let's see. Go down here to where it says works, right? So his Nazi works including Sabalu, Saddam, Ikao Makim, a book written to defend the state where the Makim Ibrahim was situated. All right, let's go ahead and skip down a little further. All right, so it says, trying to find which one. All right, Jawahir al-Razel, which means pearls of letter, a compendium of letters, fatwas, and other short communication by Ibrahim Niasee. All right. So that's that. Let's go back up here and see what else I can find that maybe I was missing. All right, so it says Al-Haji Abdul Malik Atta, a prince from Okene and the first High Commissioner of Nigeria to the United Kingdom, was one of Sheikh Ibrahim's closest disciples, as well as the Sheikh's father-in-law through his daughter Saidia Bakisu. Sheikh Ibrahim became a renowned Sheikh al-Tariqa, master of the Sufi order throughout the Hausa areas of West Africa. In the end, he had far disciples outside of Senegal than within. At the time of his death in 1975 in London, England, Shaykh Ibrahim Niasee had millions of followers throughout West Africa. So he was well respected. Check this out. It says his branch of the Tijaniya Tariqa al-Tijaniya al-Ibrahima has become the largest branch in the world. After his death, yeah, after his death, the community was led by his closest disciple, Sheikh Ali Sese and Niasee's eldest son, Al-Haji Abdullah Ibrahim Niasee. The current Khalifa in Medina Bay is his eldest surviving son, Sheikh Ahmad Tijani Nas, who became the Khalifa in 2010 after the death of his brother Khalifa Ahmadu Nas, known as Dam, on May 18th of 2010. Sheikh Ibrahim's role as principal imam of the Medina Bay Mosque has been carried out by the Sese family, while serving as Medina Bay's imam Sheikh Hassan Sese, Sheikh Ali Sese, son and Sheikh Ibrahim's maternal grandson, carried Sheikh Ibrahim's teaching to the United States, United Kingdom, and other Western countries. Sheikh Hassan Sese was generally regarded as the leader of Tariqa al-Tijaniya al-Ibrahima worldwide until his sudden death in August of 2008. Since then, Sheikh Hassan's younger brother, Sheikh Tijani Sisley, had been given the position of Medina Bay's imam. All right, so that's that information that comes from the Wikipedia source. All right, so basically what he did was he passed on the teachings. So he developed a following. He developed his own sect. You know what I'm saying? So like just like any group that you have the main group, right? And from that main group you have a set of group. And then from that set you have another set, and then you have another set. And that was him. He had his own set, and so he had a large following worldwide. He had over 1 million people following him. Okay, so he was very, very well known in the Senegal area. He was very respected. He was highly respected amongst a lot of people. Even those who was not in that Sufi order, they gave a lot of respect to this man. All right, so let's see if I can pull up some books for you guys or some information. So I just want to pull up this one particular information because I thought it was very interesting. It goes into this topic. It talks about, and this can be found at jster.org. Jster stand for journal. I forgot what it stands for. Shit. I forgot just like that. But yeah, it can be found on jster.org. So jster.org is a peer-reviewed website, okay? And it's a scholarly journal website. It has a lot of articles, a lot of information from the previous. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you put that out there. I had forgot just like that. So it stands for journal storage. Thank you, sister. So that's what jster.org stands for, journal storage. So you can find a lot of peer-reviewed articles. You find a lot of journals. Anything you're looking for, you can go on this website. They have like very old articles all the way up to current articles. So now you're not gonna find every single topic, but you're gonna find a lot of stuff on here. So I will strongly recommend this website to a lot of people, especially for those who are in college or currently going to school and they can't find no scholarly website to go to. Yeah, I recommend this. This is one of the articles, or one of my favorite websites. All right, so this topic, it ties into the subject, but this is talking about all women are guides. So Sufi leadership and womanhood among the Talabi Bay in Senegal. So it's talking about women leadership in the Sufi orders. Okay. So I just wanted to share something. So this was written by Joseph Hill. He in the Sociology, Anthropology, Psychology, and Egyptology Department of American University in Cairo. Wow. That's a great field to get into. Anthropology and sociology are one of my favorite subjects, and psychology along with that. All right. So, anyways, now let's look under what it says abstract. Right. You see, in Sufi Islamic groups in West Africa, the position of the Makandam, one appointed as spiritual guide, is usually held by men. Although Senegalese Shaykh Ibrahim Niasee appointed many Senegalese women as Makadams throughout his life, few of his disciples were aware of these appointments. Since the 1990s, a growing number of Talib Ba, the disciple of Niasee, women have more openly led active communities of disciple. All right. Several factors have made it possible for these women to act uncontroversially as recognized leaders, including Ba Nazé popularization of mystical knowledge and authority, making them available to the general body of disciples. Two, the urbanization of the Taliban movement. And three, global and local possession, raising Muslim women's visibility as objects of discourse and as active religious and economic actors. While these women sometimes draw on global discourse of gender equality to a much larger extent, they base their religious authority on embodying and performing the interiority and submissiveness conventionally associated with pious women. So the word pious means blessed, humble, revered, etc. All right. So here's the introduction. So it says Aja Mazu Koro Mbe is the official spiritual guide or mother of a large religious federation of students at Dakar University and other institutions of higher learning or higher education. Additionally, she led a Daira, which is religious association, that totals over 100 young people, slightly more men than women, whom she has personally initiated into the Tijani Sufi order and taught to know God through Tabiya, which is spiritual education. Her disciples, or spiritual children as she called them, meet several times a week at her house. All right. Um, let me go back. Or that a disciple for various religious activity, such as chanting the name of God. I'm trying to see where did I leave off at? Okay, yeah. That of a disciple for various religious activities, such as chanting the name of God, to students affiliated with the Student Federation, along with her son-in-law, whom she has appointed as a spiritual guide, led me to her Dakar apartment where she welcomed us warmly, sitting across from us in her living room. Her face framed in a dark gold embroidered scarf draped over her shoulders. She spoke with a measured and calm voice, as exuding confidence and gentleness. All right. So the author basically, or the person that written this article basically had a chance to meet with one of the female scholars, the female sheikh, and he has actually sat down and had an interview with her. Okay. So let's see. All right. So here she is sitting in the middle. Okay. All right. So these are the women scholars. All right. So let's go on. Okay, so let's go down to what it says Islam, Authority, and Women Agency. Hold on. Ooh. Okay, wait a minute here. What the heck? Okay, anyways, let me go back down. So it says Islam Authority and Women Agency. So Muslim Women's Religious Agency has gradually become a central question in scholarship on West Africa since Boyd and Lies called on scholars to examine women's religious lives and to explain rather than take for granted their absence from available records. Commenting on a broad pattern of women's marginalization from formal and legalistic Islamic authority in West Africa, Cologne concludes that mystical tendencies are better able than reformist or fundamental Islam to tackle women's particular problem and to give expression to their own sociability. Indeed, many have observed women gravitating towards more unofficial and aesthetic practices, which behaviors ordinarily defined as incompatible with feminine decorum can be sanctioned. Spirit possession practices throughout much of Africa are largely a women's affair since men often favor exorcism over possession in the name of Islamic orthodoxy. Male students have often been the driving force behind reformist movements whose condemnation of wasteful life cycle rituals that move income into female dominated spaces has resonated with struggling young men. In Senegal, where the male dominated hierarchy is Sufism, Murid women have found many ways to obtain blessing, merit, and prestige in their religious community outside the masculine spaces of formal religious authority from which they are largely excluded. Okay. However, women's participation in a range of Islamic movements complicates generalization, claiming one tendency or another as more responsive to women's need. Urban Taliban by women's increasingly prominent role within the Sufi movement since the 1990s have coincided with women's increasing prominence in numerous Islamic movements throughout West Africa, from Salif-inspired Islamist reformists to reformist Dua to Sufi revival movements and local movements that defy such categories despite the pervasive tendency of religious controversies to present a clear opposition between reformists and Sufism traditionalism. Movements that prominently involve women span this divide and often share several characteristics, invoking textual authenticity against entrenched tradition and authority structures, emphasizing individual Muslim self cultivation as pious subject, actively involving women as fully accountable members and religious agents, and preaching the universal availability of Islamic knowledge. Taken together, recent studies suggest that women's complement to a movement depend less on how liberal its attitudes are towards them than on the degree to which it assumes their moral agency and actively involves them in religious life. The most conservative reformist movements with regards to women's dress, uh, seclusion, and patriarchy are often work to expand women's education, involve them in preaching, and task them in publicly modeling proper attire and piety, even encouraging men to share in domestic work in order to allow women more time to preach. Oh, all right then. All right then. So I just wanted to kind of present this article. I'm not going to go any further into it, but um, I thought that maybe it was something very interesting. I had a hard time trying to get this screen up. All right, so yeah, I just thought this article was very interesting. Yeah, it's just basically go into women's leadership in within the Sufi order, and that's all. But because traditionally speaking, in Islam, I mean, women there are women sheikh in Islam. There are women sheikh out there, but the way they have it in like the Orthodox tradition, or in the Orthodox culture, um, especially in the Sunni, women are not allowed to teach the men. Like if they was to teach, they could teach young adults, young children. and other women's, but they can't teach the men because the way they believe that men are the ones supposed to be the leaders and they're supposed to be the ones that's supposed to be the teachers, right? So that's why when you go to the masjid, you might see the men in the front and the women in the back, because the way that it's set up is that men are supposed to be the one that lead the prayer. They're supposed to be the one that call the adhan. They're supposed to be the ones that's supposed to be the teacher. Right, even in the household, they supposed to be the head of the household, so they supposed to be the one that's teaching. And the woman, like she can only teach the children and other women. You know what I'm saying? That's what she can do. But when it comes to men, she can't really teach the men as far as like the Islamic scholarship is concerned. So that's just how that's how it's structured in the Islamic culture typically. But some things are changing. Some things are changed, in modern times, that, more and more women are starting to gain some leadership powers. More women are starting to like lead spiritual movements, spiritual groups and things like that. They're starting to lead prayers and, become more involved in teaching or whatnot. But yeah, so if you want to say on the nutshell, yeah, Islam, I mean, well, all Abrahamic religion is kind of more patriarchal. It's like pretty more patriarchal in a sense. So if you want to say that in a nutshell, but in Islam in particular, it's very patriarchal. You know what I'm saying? Because they believe that men are supposed to be the one to lead a community and lead a family. So, I mean, so yeah, that's just how it is. I mean, but now, like I said, things are changing. You know what I'm saying? It's gradually changing. So you got more women that's in, leadership position in spiritual and religious movement. So, all right. So let me talk to the chat. Hey, Gullah, how you doing? Thank you, Gullah, for coming through. Shout out to Gullah. I gotta check your channel out more often. Shout out to Dominant Man. Shout out to you. All right. So let's go and let's find out some more information. So let's see, what else can I find? All right, so real quick, I know some of you guys are familiar with this book, okay? So this book kind of it ties into this subject, all right? But it also talks more so about the Murtad movement, which is in Senegal, but it ties into the subject about Sufi Islam and West Africa. All right, this book is called The Walking Quran, Islamic Education, Embodying Knowledge and History in West Africa by Rudolph T. Ware III. Okay. So let's go and let's look at the introduction. All right, so I'm gonna look at the introduction in this book, okay? Islam, the Quran School, and the Africans, right? Emulate the blacks, for among them are three lords of the people of paradise: Luqman the sage, the niggas, and Bilal the Muslim or Muzin, saying the attributes to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Quran School, believing Muslims hold that more than 1,400 years ago, a chain of recitation was initiated in a cave on Mount Hira, just outside of Mecca. The angel Gabriel began reciting the word of God to a man who had been chosen to bear the burden of prophethood. Muhammad ibn Abdullah heard the command to recite and obey. He listened intently to the words that followed and repeated them faithfully as he had heard them. He taught this recitation first to his wife Khadijah Ranlahu Anna, and then to a close circle of people whose hearts were touched by the reading and submitted themselves to the service of the one God. Central to that service was the ritual prayer, which soon became the principal way of giving the faith concrete form. This act engage not only the tongue, the heart, and the intellect, but the limbs as well. Muhammad learned the movements by copying Jibril, who sometimes appeared to him in human form. All right. So he passed this prayer on to those who had submitted to God by reenacting the motion and reciting the words. Nearly a millennium and a half later, small children in West Africa are forged into new living links in this chain of recitation every day. Many suffer hungers, thirst, and corporal punishment to make their fragile young bodies into worthy vessel for God's verbatim speech. They then mimic their teachers, bending and prostrating those bodies to produce the movements of the angel whose Muslims believe taught humanity the word of God and the most perfect form of worship. All right. Let's see. All right. Let me go ahead and scroll down and see what else I can find. So as you can see, this is the Quran school in Dakar from an early 20th century. Okay. So now one of the things, from my experience going to an Islamic school, supposedly, and you know I say supposedly, one of the first thing they do teach is the Quran to young people. They teach the Quran because they feel that it's very important that they learn the language of the Arabic language. So they got to, and one of the ways to learn Arabic is to learn how to recite the Quran, and you learn the Hadith, of course. And the most easier verse in the Quran to recite is the Al-Fatiha, which is the opening, and then also the last two surah in the Quran, right? Those are easy. Those are the main ones that's very easy. So for me, one of the things we had to learn how to do was stand up and recite the surahs. So whether it was the Fatiha, whether it was the Nas, or whether it was whatever surah it was, you had to recite it. And even if it was a long surah, you had to recite that. Okay, if you knew the long surah, you know what I mean. So that was just part of the teaching. Okay, so you learning the language early on. All right, and one of the ways you learn how to recite, then you learn how to speak the language, etc. And then from there, of course, you get into the STEM, the science and technology, the engineering, mathematics, because that's a prominent thing in Islamic culture as well. You really like math and science is like a big thing in the Islamic practice. All right. So let's go further down. Let's look at the Walking Quran. So right here, where it says the Walking Quran is reported that Aisha, radiallahu anha, wife of the Prophet and one of the early Muslim communities, most important intellectual, was asked to describe the character of her deceased husband to a man who had not known Muhammad in life. No stranger to the arts of rhetoric, she answered the man's question with a question. Have you recited the Quran? The man affirmed that he had. Then you know his character. She replied, his character was the Quran. All right. So it says this hadith is often mentioned in sermons and speeches in contemporary Muslim society. The manifest meaning is that the Prophet comportment and behavior matched the revelation he had been chosen to bear, often uttered in moralizing context. This hadith seems to be invoked to enjoin its barriers or its hearers simply to study the Quran and emulate the normative prophet or prophetic example. Beyond this, however, the hadith might be understood as an ontological statement about the prophet himself. In this reading, the implication is not that prophet was merely the vessel for revelation or simply that his character reflected it, but that God's word had filled his inner being to the point that he physically embodied the word. In a reported in a report sometimes cited alongside this one, Aisha Ranlahu Anna leaves little doubt that she wishes to invoke this more concrete form of embodying the book, saying of her late husband, he was the Quran walking on the earth. All right. All right, so let me go into the chapter. I'm trying to all right, so I'm still on the introduction. This is a long introduction. Okay. So let's go down to all right, so let's go down to where it says politics, ideology, and epistemology. Or you know what? Let's go down to where it says emulate the blacks. So it says West Africa has drawn relatively little attention from scholars' interest in the history of Islamic knowledge. Scholarly studies of Islam here, as elsewhere in sub-Saharan Africa, turn on binary opposition of syncretism and orthodoxy. African Islam or Islamic Africa, the former consists of a complex including Sufism, divination, spirit possession, and talismanic uses of the Quran. Though controversial to some observers, all of these practices are ancient in Islam and are present in every Muslim society in the world. Islam in Africa, conversely, is often synonymous with Salafi, Wahhabi, and Islamist influences. And it consists of reform, which entails the promotion of modernized schooling, literalist approaches to text, Arab cultural mores, and a distrust of all form of esotericism. Western scholars and many modern Muslims often uncritically accord Islam orthodoxy and textual legitimacy to these reformists who, paradoxically, given their reverence for scripture, have often opposed traditional Quran schooling. All right, so here is a graph right here of the population of Muslims. So it says between 50 and 100% Muslims. Okay, as you can see, the northern part and the sub-Sahara, you'll find a lot more Muslims. Okay, covered within these region, and then it says between 20 and 49% Muslims. All right, where it's dark in that right here. Then you got 5 to 19% Muslims. Then you got 0 to 4% Muslim. So where you see the dark color at is where you find a lot of Muslim population. Okay. All right. And it says in Nigeria, Muslims are probably a slightly majority and certainly a plurality in a population that includes many Christians and a smaller number of practitioners of traditional African religions. Similarly, in Ethiopia, Muslims are, at the very least, a large minority in a religiously diverse population. So, but these 237 million African Muslims are not always or even usually islands of Islam and seas of religious pluralism. Muslims comprise more than 98% of the population in such widely separate countries as Niger and Somalia. So here is the Arabic writing. All right, so I'm gonna go to the last part because, as you can see, it's a lot of information within this book. So it's gonna talk about syncretisms and Islams. So Marti attacked the orthodoxy of Black Muslim in ways that were extreme, but were hardly isolated. By the time he left French West Africa in 1921, the die was cast. Islam Noor had become a matter of administrative and intellectual orthodoxy in Francophone circle. Colonial administrators and scholars in British Africa thought and acted along similar lines, and together they racialized framing of African Islam has had lasting consequences outlined here by Rutger Seaman in the works of French and British scholar administrators such as Paul Marty and Harold Ingram, and of later academics, occasionally with a missionary background, such as Venice Montel and John Spencer Trimagram. There is obvious conflation of the categories religion and race. African Islam, or Islam Noor in the French parlance, has since become the common denominator in both academic and non-academic discourse about Islam in Africa, conveying the image of an essentially secretist and superstitious, and in any case, adulterated version of Islam. All right. All right, then. So as you can see, it's a lot of information in this book. So I ain't gonna go any further or any detail. The Walking Quran, Islamic Education, Embodied Knowledge and History in West Africa, Rudolph T. Ware the Third. Okay, so you guys can check that book out. So I'm going ahead and go on to the next one. And let's see. If you guys have not known about this book, I think you guys need to check this book out. Okay. So I have went over this book before, but it's called Deep Knowledge, Ways of Knowing in Sufism and Ifa, Two West African Intellectual Tradition. Okay. So this is by Ula Damini Ugane. Ula Damini Ugane. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so let's look at part one, where it says ways of knowing in Tijani Sufism. All right, so the first one is, what is Tijani Sufism? It says the light of truth is a darkness more brilliant than all other lights combined, right? All right, so let's go down. Let's see, what else can we find? All right, so let's go down to where it says Sufi Orders. All right, so around the 6th Islamic century, the structure of this kind of spiritual training changed dramatically with the emergence of the new social institution and tradition around Sufi masters. These traditions came to be known as tariqas, or Sufi order. Before this time, the teaching and training of Sufism largely took place in the context of individual master-disciple relationship or in small circles, like the famous school of Baghdad, which formed around Jihad. But this informal structure gradually gave way to more formal structure of the tariqa from the 12th and 13th Christian century onward, as increasing number of disciples and changing social and spiritual condition demanded a greater degree of organization. The new Sufi orders serve as organization and structures designated to facilitate spiritual teaching, training, and a particular way of life. Typically, a taqwa would form around a great Sufi saint who disciple would organize and formalize his method of spiritual instruction and practices. Okay, so it says Sufi orders are typically run by sheikh or spiritual guide who initiate and train disciple according to a particular method. The sheikh will have had completed this process of spiritual training him or herself at the hands of another spiritual master, and so on back to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This chain of transmission or spiritual lineage is called Salicila, and is seen as sign of the orthodoxy and efficacy of the order. Disciple often called Murid and Fakura, or the Persian equivalent Diverji, can join the Tariqa and attach themselves to the Salicila through the process. Through the process of initiation. Initiatory rites and practice vary greatly from order to order. Sometimes initiation takes the form of the bestowal of a cloak from master to disciple. Sometimes it takes the form of a pledge in which the disciple grabs the sheikh's hand, and sometimes it is just the mere repetition, right, of a phrase. Sometimes sheikhs goes out looking for disciples to initiate, and sometimes disciples have to undergo trials and tests of their sincerity and humility before initiation. Now, whatever the case may be, initiation connects the disciple to the initiatory chain of the silsila and authorize him or her to perform the rites of Sufi order. These specific rites, usually called aqwad, are typically daily lanterns, consist of the Quranic passage formulate to recite a certain numbers of time in both the morning and the evening. A typical example would be 100 recitation of Astaghfirullah, I beg forgiveness of God, followed by 100 of Salat ala Nabri, prayers on the Prophet, and 100 recitation of the Shahada, La ilaha illallah. The wid also may be accompanied by invocation. All right. So sheikhs sometimes prescribe kalawas or spiritual retreats in which the disciples remain isolated, devoted themselves only a particular dekah or invocation or set of invocation for a set period of time, one week, 40 days, or a year, or until they have achieved a desired spiritual result. And it says sheikh of an order will often have several maqadims or representative who can initiate disciple on his or her behalf and train them in the practices of the order. Some orders also appoint caliphs who act as sheikhs in their own right, appointing maqadims and initiating their own disciple, all the while remaining attached to sheikh of the order. Sufi orders often also have group session of dhikr called hijras or majils, which sometimes involve drumming, singing, poetry, and dance. The most famous and one of the most elaborated Sufi rituals of this kind is the Sima, Rumi's Malawi order, from which comes from their nickname, the Hurling Dervish. These activities usually take place in a Sufi center or mosque called Zawiwa, right? A major order like Qadira, founded by the famous Sheikh Abdul al-Qadir al-Jilani, will typically have a main or mother Zawiwa and other Zawiwas in different cities around the world. All right, so as you can see in this book, let me go back to the front cover. It goes into the ways of Sufism and the Ifa tradition. So there are infusion taking place. There are Zikronism. So the author talked about the Zikronism of, practicing Sufi Islam and also practicing the Ifa culture. So the author himself may be a Sufi Muslim and also practicing the Ifa at the same time. Okay. So there always have been Zikronism within the African tradition, when they take on, especially when it came down to Abrahamic religion. All right. So now today in the African countries, they're trying to ban people from like Zikronizing the religion. So as you can see, you got the Christians, especially, they really just like, all right, you need to get rid of this African tradition because that is the way of the devil. You're practicing the way of Satan. Get rid of it. So they're trying to stop those from, the locals from practicing the tradition, but they refuse to give it up. So they're saying, no, we're going to synchronize this. We're going to take on our ancestral practice, our customs, and we're going to bring it into this Abrahamic culture. If you want us to practice Abrahamic religion, we're going to incorporate this as well. We're not going to give it up. So Zikronism is always something that we have done, you know what I'm saying? And especially here in America. But like I was telling you guys before, for those of you that are in the Abrahamic religion like Christianity, if you go to church, going to a black church, you will see a lot of African practice. You will see a lot of African customs in these churches. Okay. So I'm gonna move right along. All right. So this book right here is called Jihad of the Pen. Jihad of the Pen. So I already went over that the other day, but yeah, this is another book that you guys need to check out. Jihad of the Pen. The Sufi literature of West Africa. Let's see what we get into right here. Okay, so let's go down to page 169. Okay, so right here it talks about Shaykh Ibrahim Niasee. It says Shaykh Ibrahim Niasee, Jihad of the Pen, lasted throughout his adult life. His first work was a poem summarizing proper compartment on Sufi path, the spirit of etiquette. Written at the age of 20, his last writing was another lengthy poem, The Journey of the Heart Through Praise of the Chosen Beloved to the Presence of the Lord. Right, written in the last years of his life. A good portion of Sheikh writing was dedicated exclusively to utilizing the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All affairs of the creation are from the most eloquent prophet. So my eyes, my chest, my paper, my tongue, my pen, my ink, all have I devoted in service to his remembrance, for his remembrance is exaltation and ascension. So while Sheikh Ibrahim's poetry for the Prophet, especially from his later years, fills volumes, he also wrote several notable poems commemorating the founder of the Tijaniya Sufi order to which he belonged, Sheikh Ahmad al-Tijani. Other poetry included versified travelogues that account Sheikh Ibrahim's various pilgrimages and visits to foreign lands. The Sheikh, of course, also wrote a good deal of prose work. These writings consist of lengthy treatises in defense of Sufism, elaboration on unseen reality, summarized treatments of Arabic grammars for the pedagogical purposes, clarification of legal issues, and numerous sermons and letters to disciples on all sorts of matters. Although separate entries for an author in the Arabic literature of Africa series can be misleading, as many works appear more than once with different titles or as part of different collection. Niasee appears to have written more than 50 distinct works. Okay. So I'm not going to really get into all of that, but if you want to find out more about Ibrahim Niasee in this book, just go to chapter 13, the introduction, and it goes into all the different writings that he has done. Okay. So it talks about the spirit of etiquette. Then it talks about the removal of confusion. And let's see what else. And it talks about the Jude letters. All right. So again, if you want to check out more, just go to part 4, where it says Shaykh Ibrahim bin Abdullah Niasee Zachary Wright. So yeah, part 4 of this book, the page number is 166. Okay, so the page number it starts at 166. So you guys should check that book out. Okay. It's called Jihad of the Pen, the Sufi literature of West Africa. So check out that book. And so then here's another book, which called Islam in Africa. All right, by Roger Seisman, Note Volker. Let's see. Right, so here's the introduction. Okay. So going down here, right? So it says living knowledge is a story of how a community of West African Muslim that surrounding the Senegalese Sufi Shaykh Ibrahim Niasee strove to actualize their religious identity in the historical context in which this happened. Learning Islam was meant as a transformative process, one that changed an ordinary human being into a luminous physical presence. Such an individual acquired the profession of character necessary to manifest and transmit the religion to become an isthmus between the material world and divine realm. The Rabbi held up to the sunrise. The true meaning of following the example of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was to become like him, a human being, but not like other human beings, just as a ruby is a stone, but not like other stones. All right. And it says, realizing this extraordinary human potential required from the long-held perspective of West African Islamic scholarship, the cultivation of individual disposition, a way of becoming in the world through the close companionship of students and teachers, Sufism or Islamic mysticism, which became prevalent in West Africa from the 19th century on, made use of deepen such enduring practices of Islamic knowledge transmission. But Sufism did not itself initiate the Maraboutism or master disciple colonialism, for which West African Islam has often been thought synonymously. This book is in one of West Africa's most prominent Muslim communities as an elaboration of a tradition of Islamic scholarly specialization spanning nearly 1,000 years of West African history. Okay. So it says, beginning with a young man's 1929 declaration on a small farm near banks of Senegal's Salam River that he contained an overflowing flood of divine knowledge, the community of Ibrahim Niasee has manifested one of the most successful Islamic revivals in the contemporary Muslim world. The Sheikh's vibrant intellectual legacy and millions of affiliates to his legacy concentrated in West Africa, but increasingly found throughout Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, and among Muslim minorities in the West, justified the community's emerging profile in academic literature. This was a global community unified by the promise of knowing God and by the attachment to Ibrahim Niasee as the culmination of a long West African Islamic scholarly tradition. The challenge for the researcher then is to account for the historical novelty of communities' intellectual and social trajectory while recognizing its formation in centuries of Islamic learning in a West African context. All right. So this book, again, is called Living Knowledge in West Africa Islam. Okay. All right. So this book is written by Zachary Valentine Wright. Okay. Living Knowledge in West Africa Islam, Zachary Valentine Wright. So, and I'm going to pull up the name of the author, Zachary Valentine Wright, and who he is. And this book goes into, this is the last book. Okay, this is the last review. This book goes into Divine Flood, Ibrahim Niasee and the Roots of a 20th Century Sufi Revival by Rudiger Seisman. Okay, so let's just look at the introduction of this book. So the introduction. All right, so it says, Baye means father in Wolof and its affectionate epithet of Ibrahim Niasee, the main protagonist of this study. Medina is the name of the settlement Niasee founded in 1931, a few miles outside of Kalak, a provincial capital in Senegal. Today, it is one of the biggest neighborhoods in Kalak and home to the headquarters of a transnational branch of the Tijani path, best known under the name of Jamaat al-Fadah. It is no exaggeration to say that Niasee has left an enormous legacy. Okay, he was leader for millions of African Muslims from between the Atlantic Ocean to the Red Sea, a charismatic spiritual guide, a distinct scholar of Islam, an outstanding Sufi saint, and accomplished Sheikh of the Tijaniya, a successful mediator between his followers and government authorities, a high-ranking official in many international Islamic organizations, a prolific writer and gifted poet, to mention only some of his most important roles. Okay, so that's the intro. Now, let's go to the first chapter. All right, so as you can see, it's written in Arabic, but it says the flood of the seal, Akma al-Tajani, is coming soon. So prepare for it by vacating your hearts of all others so that it can take their place. Okay, and that's Ibrahim Niasee, Kashif al-Iblas. All right. It says, imagine a fathomless well, not an ordinary well, mind you, but a well which has no bottom. Imagine next a tireless worker who continually draws water from that well. Then imagine a leather bucket that never once repaired. Fourthly, imagine a basin next to that well, which eventually becomes full. Finally, imagine a water so precious it can be thrown away and yet cannot be put back into a well already overflowing. The question arises, what should be done with the water after the basin is full? The answer comes, many basins will be constructed around the well to receive the precious water, In this parallel, the well represented Allah, whose being is continuous without end. The water is divine gnosis and experience. The leather bucket is the prophet. The water in the parallel is Sheikh al-Tijani. The basin is an extraordinary spiritual adept who has received so much in the way of divine gnosis that he must communicate this gnosis to others or it will overflow. He is the owner of the Fadia or flood, Shaykh Ibrahim Niasee, Ibrahim Mahmoud Job, as quoted in Sisley Revivalist 7 through 8. All right, so that's part of chapter 1. Let's see. So as you can see, it goes into the intro in the beginning about his life, growing up as a child, and growing up as an adolescent. So let's just go further down. Okay, so these are the list of scholars, right? Or the initiates. So okay. Let's see what can we find on here. All right, so just give me a moment because I'm trying to all right, so let's just go up to here. It says hagiographies of Muslims. Saints often attempt to prove the saintly status of their subjects with evidence from their early childhood or before their birth, and sometimes even well before conception. The life of the saint is made to appear as straightforward ascension to the ranks of sainthood, although the saintly hero frequently faces fierce opposition and sends the plots by his enemies. Proving superiority over his opponent is part of the saint's success story. The approach taken in the hagiographic genre is always teleological. We can hardly expect a discussion or ruptures in the saintly career. These would blemish the flawless picture these sources are out to present. Okay. All right, so drawn mainly on a variety of hagiographical sources, this chapter introduced Ibrahim Niasee, the main protagonist of the study, together with the emergence of the Fadia or flood, the iconic event in the history of the movement. Although such sources offer few clues to the kind of explanation academic scholars are looking for, they can nevertheless give highly valuable insights. Among other things, they contain the official scholarly justification that demonstrates how the saints matches the criteria of sainthood. Often they also give access to the perspective of the ordinary followers and reveal some of the reasons why they would regard this particular person as a saint. The latter applies especially to oral hagiography, whereas written sources tend to display a learned discourse rather than a popular one. All right. So again, so in this chapter, in this book, Divine Flood is basically giving accounts on the life of Ibrahim Niasee and his movement. the Sufi order of the Tijaniya. So, and how he became a sheikh and how he became revered and respected. So, yeah, if you guys want to check this book out, you can. Again, it's by Rudiger Seasman. All right, so I don't necessarily have to go into all the details of that book, because it's a lot to cover, but just something for you guys to look into. So I'll make sure that I'll post up. I'll make sure I post up the books that I have on my page. If you guys are on Facebook, you know how I do. I always make sure I will post up the information, give you guys the title of the book, so you guys can check it out for yourself. You can either purchase them or you can download them, whatever you gotta do. Anyways. So this was a good day, a good video. However, it's raining where I'm at, so it's storming kind of bad outside. So that's why there was like constant interruption. So yeah, it's storming pretty bad out there, but it slowed down a little bit. All right, but again, I want to thank you all for subscribing to the channel, checking out the channel, hitting the notification bell, making sure that you guys are tuning in, and again, share this video, share the channel. Make sure you give it a recommendation to others, and you come back and check out more contents. All right, I'll keep you guys posted on the next subject matter. So I have a lot of digging I got to do, and I hope you all who are observing the Ramadan celebrate the Ramadan. If you're fasting, go ahead, observe your fast. Enjoy yourself. Be careful. Try to, because let's put it like this: fasting is a form of meditation. Fasting is a way to basically purify yourself, not just from a physical, but also from a mental. So once you learn how to purify yourself physically, you will purify yourself mentally. So fasting is a good thing. It's not really a bad thing, So for those of us that are fasting, let's enjoy this fast. Let's stay focused. Let's be at peace. You know what I'm saying? If you got to listen to the Quran recitation, do that. You know what I'm saying? If you want to listen to some African chant, do that. If you want to listen to some sound of the drumming, you can do that as well. You know what I mean? If you want to listen to the little Buddhist meditation, Native American shamanism, whatever. If you want to listen to that while you fasting, do that. I mean, because you got to be at peace. That's your way of being at peace. This is your way of being able to elevate your mind and things of that nature, because I know today you have to go to work. Some of you got kids or whatever you got going on. So you need that time to yourself. You need to like recharge the body, recharge the mind. And that's the most important thing. That's very important. But other than that, I'm about to go ahead and go about my day and just do some reading, do some, watch some little lectures or something, get caught up on things that where I left off at. So again, I'll come back to you guys later. All right. And let me read some comments before I go. Let me read some comments. Oh, yeah. Peace to Brother Vinyasa. Thank you for coming through, Vinyasa. I know you came in kind of late. Shout out to everybody that came in the chat. I want to thank you guys for coming through. Okay. Let me read some of these comments. It says, living amongst others, we tend to pick up their values, even those values are no good to ourselves. It depends. My interest is more in African culture and history before Islam. Okay, and that's very important. You know what I'm saying? You always want to study the culture of your ancestors. That's very important because culture is really important. African people did not need the brainwashing of Orthodox Islam. I mean, I can agree to disagree. Some people feel like they needed it. Some people feel like they need to practice Abrahamic religion. Some people feel like it was beneficial. You know what I'm saying? See, we don't know what was going on during that time period. We don't know why many people took on the practice of practicing Orthodox religion or Abrahamic religion. Now, yes, there was those invaders when they came into the land. They impose their religion ideology on people, but there was some who was willingly initiated, or they started to practice the religious custom. You know, so we don't know everybody's reason for taking on religious practice. We know some people do it because they want to bring about sense of control over others, and some people do it because they're trying to find a sacred place in their life. All right, but we got to remember this: religion is nothing more than just a blueprint. That's all it is. It's just a blueprint. At the end of the day, it goes back to the psychology of those individuals. So the psychology is what matters the most, because religion is just the blueprint. All right. It's just based on the intentions of a group of people, or the intention of the individuals and what they're doing. That's what's more so about. So when people say, well, we got to blame religion, well, you can't really blame religion without blaming the people. You got to blame the people that's behind religion. You can't blame religion in itself, because religion itself is just the blueprint. You know what I'm saying? You have to blame the people that's organizing different religious sects or different religious groups. You know what I'm saying? You got to blame those individuals. You just can't blame the religion in itself, because the religion in itself was just created based on man's idea. You know what I mean? Any religion that you get into, it don't matter if it's Abrahamic, whether it's Eastern philosophy, whether it's mysticism, whatever. This is man's idea and perception and understanding and interpretation about the natural phenomenon. Okay? So it doesn't matter what spiritual path you go on. You just know that at the end of the day, it comes from man's philosophical point of view about life. I'm going to say that again. It comes from man's philosophical point of view about life. Islam and Arabic culture were no more than overlords of the people, of which Africans could have done better without. I mean, yeah, they could have, but again, there was those who was in the trading business and they decided to convert. But I mean, it's around, so people still gonna do what they want to do. They still gonna practice what they want to practice. You know what I'm saying? So you even got people that practice things that's like way tabooed, way beyond taboo than religion. I mean, they still gonna do what they want to do. Africans did not need Islam to learn math and science. I didn't say that. I never said that Africans need Islam to learn math and science. What I was saying is that, in the Islamic culture, that math and science is a prevalent thing, because you had a lot of Muslims that played a very big part in today what we know as the STEM, okay? Especially in the golden age period, in the medieval time period, all right? So, no, they did not need Islam, but they chose Islam, but they didn't need Islam to learn math or science or acquire any other form of knowledge. They just chose to practice it and incorporate it into their traditional knowledge, into their traditional culture. That's what they did. All right. Let's see. Anything else? Nope. All right. So again, y'all have a good one. And again, shout out to the chat for the comments. Thank you so much for coming over here with your commentaries and whatnot. And for those of you that just coming in, you're going to watch the video from the very beginning. And that's that. All right. So y'all have a great one. Peace. Ramadan Mubarak.